Good evening, everyone. I'm Akash Lopinder. It's good having you back with us. Negotiations for the sale of the Grand Lucayne Resort have fallen nearly 6 weeks behind, according to the tourism minister, as both sides were, as he put it, distracted by Hurricane Dorian. And now that the country is in recovery mode, talks have only now resumed.
Meetings are ongoing, as we get down to the crunch line, as we look over the terms of the arrangement, we look over the heads of agreement. It becomes very intense. A lot of meetings go on. And then, ultimately it comes up to the ministers and then ultimately to the cabinet to approve. I understand certainly at the technical level, the negotiations are going very well. And then the policy decisions will be brought to cabinet. We'll make decisions on that. But we're very anxious for this to happen. So I remain very optimistic.
The government purchased the beleaguered hotel last August for $65 million. The plan was to resell it as soon as possible. In April, the government signed a letter of intent with Royal Caribbean International and the ITM Group to purchase the resort along with the redevelopment of the Freeport Harbor. Meantime, tourism numbers to take a hit post-Dorian, officials projecting a nearly 10% decrease by the end of the year. Still, Tourism Minister Dionisio Diaglo is optimistic things will bounce back and quickly.
So our decrease is around 9% as opposed to the full 12%. So we're a little encouraged by that. By early next year, we're seeing a bit of a rebound. So that's the nature of tourism. It's very resilient. It's subject to a lot of shocks. Hurricanes, travel advisories, but short-term memory is very short and it bounces back, so we're expecting that to happen.
The Ministry of Tourism certainly been busy getting the message out that the Bahamas is still open for business despite the blow to Abaco and Grand Bahama's economies.
Just last week I spent 4 hours on television stations in the United States, just going from one city to another city in prime time slots in major cities, getting the message out that the Bahamas is open for business. Continue to book your holiday, and the best way to help the Bahamas is to visit the Bahamas, given our dependency on tourism.
Now, the tourism minister couldn't say exactly how much this campaign will cost, but that it did require the ministry's budget to be adjusted.
I think what we've done is we've brought our spend forward. Obviously, we had it mapped out over the year, but given the urgency of the situation, and given the fact that we really wanted to get the message out there that we were open for business, we brought forward a bit of our spend in order to get that message out. So we'll see. We'll adjust. Budgets are, you adjust here and adjust there.
In other news, the government's considering reducing the time for a person to officially be declared dead. As it stands, that's 7 years. It's a burning issue considering quite a number of people are still missing in hurricane-torn Abaco and Grand Bahama.
Bear in mind that this is not something that you can just pull out of thin air. It requires consideration of the implications. What would have happened if they declared Dwayne Sands to be dead and then 6 months later he shows up? Does he get to retrieve his real property? Does he get to now pay back the life insurance on his life? These are serious questions. So while there's a need for closure, I think we have to be very careful that we think this through very carefully. And I suspect what will happen is that we come up with an intermediate.
Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands also telling reporters of the government's plans to possibly ease the pain of missing relatives.
Met with family members who are seeking loved ones. And the great difficulty is that many people have heard so many different stories. So this particular family would have heard that somebody saw their loved one after the storm. They would have heard stories that somebody saw her remains after the storm, and they don't know what to think. So understand that there are hundreds of families still in anguish, still very much concerned about the people that they care about. And I think our role now is to try as best as possible to bring some closure, to help people to get to the truth about what's happened to their family members, loved ones, friends.
Now, in the event you have or know of someone missing, please feel free to call the police emergency lines at 911 or 919. In Grand Bahama, the command center can be reached at 442-2872 or 442 2870. That month-and-a-half break Hurricane Dorian forced on teachers and students over in Grand Bahama and Abaco ends this week. Education Minister Jeffrey Lloyd says school administrators, support staff, and teachers are to report to their respective schools tomorrow and students on Thursday. Since Dorian's passing, Abaco students in Crossing Rocks, Cherokee Sand, Sandy Point, Moores Island, Foxtown, and Green Turtle Key have been receiving instructions. The situation in Grand Bahama riddled with one issue after another.
First, public utilities were compromised significantly. Amidst the destruction, there was no electricity, communications networks were fragile, and the water supply was contaminated. Then there was the need to conduct proper assessments to determine the scope and extent of the repairs. This included, but was not limited to, a massive cleanup effort of the affected schools, which involved tearing out damaged walls and ceilings, carting away debris, and effecting massive mold remediation work.
Now, despite the challenges, the ministry secured the necessary approval and the following schools will reopen come Wednesday.
Freeport Primary, Walter Parker Primary, Bartlett Hill Primary, Lewis Yard Primary, Martintown Primary, Holmes Rock Primary, West End Primary, Jack Haywood Junior High, Sister Mary Patricia Junior High, Jack Haywood Senior High, St. George's Senior High, 8 Mile Rock Secondary, and the Beacon School.
Meantime, mental health professionals have been dispatched to enable and support the mental and emotional well-being of students and staff in the impacted islands. Education Director Marcellus Taylor is responding to claims that 100 new teachers have yet to be assigned or placed in a school, and that according to Bahamas Union of Teachers President Belinda Wilson. Mr. Taylor noting that while this is the case for some, there are rules to be followed, and that includes making background checks.
Moores Island School, for instance, where 50 more persons than would ordinarily have gone to that school are now in that island and attending the school, will utilize that mechanism to assist with offering subjects at the secondary school level. We also have students at the Cherokee Sound, which is typically a primary school, but the secondary school students who are there will also benefit from that. We'll do a similar thing in Foxtown, similar thing in Cooperstown, and similar thing in Sandy Point. And so this is a very helpful approach, and we are pleased that we have others who are trying to assist us with getting this done.
Mr. Taylor says once the process is complete, the teachers will be engaged. Bahamas Power and Lights teaming up with the private sector to create microgrids in North Abaco and the Keys, all in hopes of restoring power. Now, according to Works Minister Desmond Bannister, the grids will have to bypass Marsh Harbor, considering that power plant was destroyed. In an additional challenge, an area north of Marsh Harbor.
These are engineering challenges. They are putting their employees, a number of employees on the ground in Abaco. They have assistance from several other countries that are providing linesmen and other workers to come in and help. And so they are very optimistic that they're going to be able to generate power in North Abaco very soon.
There's no timeline, though, in terms of when these plants will be put in place or the issues addressed.
When you have all these poles that have been snapped, and BPL is bringing in new poles, and they're seeking to reinforce those poles by bringing in what they call Class 1 poles. Stronger poles, they have to replant poles, they have to run wire all over again, they have to bring new generation in, and they have to be sure that the lines are safe. And so, like I said, they walked all the way from Wilson City to Sandy Point, pole by pole, to make sure that when they turn that power on, people would be safe. They're going to do the same thing in the north, to ensure that every consumer is safe and that there are no challenges that are going to cause somebody to lose their life or to be hurt. So these are things that they're working carefully on and skillfully on, and they're very, very concerned about the well-being of the public.
Initial estimates for power generation are between $80 and $90 million. Bearing on the cost, Minister Bannister says Some of the work has to be done underground.
When you get into that underground work, and a number of the keys are also demanding underground infrastructure. When you get into that underground work, you can anticipate that the cost is multiplied by 2 to 3 times what it would normally cost for the overhead wires. But the plan for the Marsh Harbor area is to create an underground network in relation to a number of substations and provide power to different areas of Abacos and the Keys through that.
You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.